Hello, family. This is Refueling Your Faith, and today's message is Get Behind Me, Satan. We're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 16, verses 21 through 23. From that time, Jesus Christ began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed and be raised up on the third day. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord. This shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. Some translation says you are a hindrance to me. For you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's. What a powerful piece of scripture. Get behind me, Satan. What do we learn from this passage? Jesus shared with his disciples that he would have to suffer many things from the elders, chief priests, and scribes and be killed, but then he would be raised on the third day. Then he would be raised. You'd have to suffer, but then he would be raised on the third day. This is something that we can find comfort in because we, Christ's disciples, also walk that same path. As we are about the business of God in this world, we will go through a process much like Christ. He says that we'll also have to take up our cross and follow him. And so, in our process, in our journey of fulfilling what it is that God would have for us to do and be in this life, we will experience great suffering and we will also experience great mountaintop experiences. And here Jesus says that on the third day, he would be raised. And so I want that to be something that you acknowledge on your journey, that on your journey to accomplish and be and do what God would have you to do in this life, and there's a variety of things he wants to accomplish in your life, that in that process, you will suffer. In that process, you will have mountaintop experiences. But be ready for those areas of suffering because this world wants us to think that all of life should be roses and happiness and things going the way that we desire them to be. But the reality is, the plan that God has for us includes both suffering and mountaintop experiences. And on this journey, we will experience those. We will experience mindsets that would make us believe that suffering should not be a part of our story. And when we experience that, we say, Get behind me, Satan. That's what we said. When things are uncomfortable, when things don't look like how other stories look in other people's story, and we have people in our lives that say, hey, that shouldn't be a part of your story. Remember the story of Job? And God allowed Satan to persecute him. And he had friends that didn't say, hey, your experience is because you sinned. And it wasn't that he sinned, it's just that God allowed it to prove to Satan that Job had a relationship with God that wasn't dependent upon the shield and the good things that were happening in his life. But he had a relationship with God that was pure and that was not dependent on the things that happen. And so there will be periods in your life where you will also experience suffering. And so it may not just come from those that we call haters, but even those in our lives who love us can have mindsets that are toward the world, or he says the mindsets of man. Um, but we need to always have our mind set on the things of God. So, what am I saying to you? There may be people in your life who don't want you to walk through suffering because they love you, but we have to accept the process for which we have to walk through. There are people that might be in your life that's saying, hey, what God is calling you to do, I have no concept for it in my life, and so therefore I discourage you. Don't do that. Or I have fear concerning these things. Don't do that. Fill in the blank. Only you know what's going on in your life. And even yourself, your own thoughts that keep you from accomplishing or walking through the process to the purpose and mission that God has in that season of your life. You say to those thoughts, Get behind me, Satan. And I say the thoughts because God is clear in Ephesians 6 and 12 that we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. We're wrestling against rulers, against powers, against world forces of darkness, against wickedness. And that's why we have to put on the full armor of God. Satan will use anybody, but we have to have our minds set on God. Our mindset on God. So, in our process, keep your mind stayed on the will of God. So, Wanisa, we know that God puts people in our lives to help to direct us. And so there might be a path that we're going and we're experiencing suffering because um, we are taking the wrong path, and God may send a prophet to let us know. Well, how do we know? When we're spending time with God, their revelation will speak to the spirit that already within us. But we have to be spending time with God. We have to be spending time with God. We have to be surrendering our thoughts to God so that when someone would come, if it's from God, then it will resonate in your spirit. So I'm encouraging those who are on a difficult journey right now, and you have some naysayers or you have some people who are their mindsets, even your mindset, because I don't want to keep it on people. Because we also have mindsets that may hinder us, that are hindrances, that are stumbling blocks to us, just like Jesus and Peter may have that. But when we have thoughts and mindsets that are given to us by others or live within us that are unlike the mind of Christ in us, then we need to say, "Get behind me, Satan." And I encourage you to spend time with God so that your spirit can be fed by His word, by His thoughts, that you're spending time in prayer so that you know when a thought comes to you in your own spirit, when a thought comes to you from others around you, that it will resonate in your spirit, or it would immediately say, no, that is not the truth. I've walked through it many times in my own life, uh, where I've had to stand alone, or where I've had to just keep my mind focused on what I knew the Lord was telling me. And in the same way, you will do the same thing. So I encourage you today, those things, those thoughts that don't line up with God, you say, "Get behind me, Satan." That's your phrase today. Get behind me, Satan, and you go full force toward the mission that you know God has given you in this season. I love you. I pray this has been a blessing to you. Like this post, if it has been an encouragement to you, share this post if you believe it will bless those in your sphere of influence. Also, as always, you know that I have other inspirational content on my website, Christ Like Life Ministries, cllministries.com. I pray that this time again has been a blessing to you. If you have prayer requests, please leave them below in the comments, and I will be praying for you. We'll see you next Wednesday. God bless.